Hi everybody, Ian Bremmer here, and happy Monday. Coronavirus still going on, so it's in the middle, and we've got plenty to talk about. I'll get right into it. Cases, of course, are going up all over the world, and despite the fact that we are paying the most attention in the United States right now, it's important to recognize that within about a week, the most of the countries that are leading the league tables, as it were, in caseload are going to be outside of the advanced industrial economies. Indeed, I would say within a week, the US and UK will be the only remaining countries of the top 10 that are wealthy democracies. The rest are going to be developing countries. And that is where this disease is going. Despite all of the challenges here in the United States, overwhelmingly, it's the developing countries where you do not have the social distancing, you do not have the economic wherewithal to pay to keep people out of work. You don't have the testing, so the numbers are going to look like they're mostly in the developing world, and the reality is the cases will explode way beyond that. That will show up in death tallies that are higher per case in many of those countries than they are in the United States or Europe, because they're not testing as much, except in the countries that have really young populations. And one of the most interesting things here is that, Africa is not going to have the direct impact of coronavirus that other countries are. Nigeria is the most populous country in Africa. It's over 200 million people. Average age is something like 19. And that means most people, the vast majority that get the disease, won't even have symptoms, and they certainly won't get very sick. That is, it's nice to see that finally, sub-Saharan Africa usually gets just destroyed by all of these diseases. And here, the direct human count will be less. Here in the United States, of course, we have the highest numbers of cases per day now of any point since the pandemic really began in earnest in the US in March and April. People are saying, yeah, that's just cases. What about hospitalizations? Actually, hospitalizations are spiking now, and in many states across the country, you're starting to see hospitals getting overwhelmed in Mississippi, in Florida, in Texas, in Southern California, in Arizona. Death rates, what about that? Well, death rates also have been lower, but they've been going up. They're starting to go up. They're much higher than in Canada, much higher than in Europe. Per capita death rates in the United States overall. And even though these are comparatively young people that are mostly getting the disease right now, still, if the ICU beds get overwhelmed, then mortality goes way up. So the next few weeks, I fear, are not going to show an improvement in trajectory. It's certainly welcome that in Florida and Texas and Southern California, they've now shut the bars. One of the places where people are in most, sort of packed inside against each other. You're not sitting down, you're standing up. There's a lot of laughing, there's a lot of breathing in close quarters. So it's good to see that happen. But otherwise, none of these states have actually gone back to earlier levels of lockdown. And the problem here, of course, is that we're in the middle of an election, only a few months away. And Trump is not doing well. As I'm sure you know, he's blended approval rate is about 40% right now, down from his peak at about 46. He's behind Biden in the swing states. He's behind Biden on almost all issues, except he's consistently ahead of Biden in who voters think would handle the economy better. And that is a double-edged sword, because it means if you're Trump and you care most about winning the election, you're going to focus on doing everything possible to pivot towards the economy. And that means not talking up coronavirus, not focusing on wearing a mask, not focusing on slowing down openings or going back to lockdowns, even if that's what's required by coronavirus. So unfortunately, the very things that are most useful for Trump from the electoral perspective are also most likely to hurt the United States in terms of response function to coronavirus over the next coming months. And that's something we should worry about. Look, certainly good that Vice President Pence is now out there saying, I'm wearing a mask, wear a mask. Good to see Republican governors saying, you need to be wearing masks. You need to be socially distancing. We need to be more cautious. I do think there's more focus on science there, but it's too small. It's too late, and it's not being driven by the president. And overall, I expect that means the outcomes in the U.S. and how they're managing the crisis going to get considerably worse. One thing I'd finally say about the U.S. election, a lot of the Democrats I talk to, and you guys probably know, most of you know, I've never been a part of a political party, but I try to talk to folks around, both sides of the spectrum. Think that Biden is winning strongly, and if they won't say it publicly, they'll at least say privately, they think that this is going to be a layup for Biden. The question is whether or not they can sweep Congress as well. I'm not buying it. I do think that if you made me bet, I'd say right now Biden looks like he's going to win by a relatively small amount. And others say, Karl Rove will say that, Republican insiders will say that, people in the White House recognize that they're behind right now. I suspect that even Trump understands that, though I certainly haven't discussed it with him. But that doesn't mean that he can't win. The power of incumbency matters in the United States. But also, people that look at Trump, Hillary, and say Hillary was much more toxic and Trump, only barely won. And so now with all of these problems, the economic problems, the coronavirus problems, the social dissent, that it's going to be so much easier for Biden than it was for Hillary. They're forgetting not only the power of incumbency, but also the fact that Trump, as president, has levers of power that he can both use and abuse that he did not have in 2016. When you are president, you have power. You have the ability to get others to do things, both legally and extra-legally, that you don't in any other position in the United States. And, the fact that this is a guy that was willing to withhold Ukrainian aid to get them to launch an investigation against Biden, that's something you can't do as a candidate. That's something you can do as president. You shouldn't do it. In my view, it should be illegal. It's impeachable. He shouldn't have been acquitted. Not the point. Point is, it happened. And if that happened and he gets off, then what else is he going to do over the next 5 months? History in the making right here in the United States. Not something that frequently happens. Anyway, going to be interesting. And be involved, be engaged, be alert, and avoid people. And I'll talk to you soon.